We recognize that the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society gathers on the traditional land of the Western Abenaki people. We respect the Abenaki's spiritual and life-giving relationship to this land. We seek to honor the living traditions of the Abenaki people, and we humbly hope to learn from them how we may better live in harmony with the land and our fellow humans.
Good morning and welcome to Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society streaming service. Our service this morning is Blessing of the Animals. Today we're going to honor our pets and different animals through pictures, stories, the sermon, and we're going to end with a blessing. My name is Esther Thomas, and I am your worship associate for today's service, which is led by our minister, Reverend Barnaby Feeder. If you are visiting today, please send us a message and introduce yourself. Be sure to join us after the service for our virtual coffee hour. After the service, those who wish to stay for our coffee hour should stay on the Zoom meeting, and Jordan will move us into our breakout rooms. For our service today, where there is an opportunity to join in word or song, you will see the words appear on the screen. So for Pathways to Connection this week, today after service at 3:30, the Council of Ministers will meet, and this is online. We also have the RE Youth Group gathering at 4 p.m. and the Creation Justice Group meeting today at 4 p.m. For more ways to connect or see upcoming events, please visit our website. For our call to worship today, I'll be reading a poem by Alice Walker. Love, if it is love, never goes away. It is embedded in us like seams of gold in the earth, waiting for light, waiting to be struck. And now for our chalice lighting. We light this chalice, not because we must, but because we may. We light this chalice, not because we have the truth, but because we each come bearing and seeking many truths. We light this chalice in connection across distance, language, and species. We light this chalice that our religion may be a beacon of light, hope, and justice.
Let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to seek what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. And may we walk in peace. Let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to seek what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. And may we walk in peace. Hey everyone. I'm glad to see all of you out there on Zoom and feel you in my heart, those of you who are out in the world and not in the Zoom meeting or seeing this later. So today is our Blessing of the Animals service, which is something we've talked about doing for years. I know that Francois has especially hoped that we would do it, and we kept trying to figure out a way to do it live and could never quite figure it out. So one of the pluses of this Zoom time is that now we can do it. You could even bless your pet if it was an elephant. It wouldn't be too big to show up. Everyone is really welcome when we do it on Zoom, right? There's no limit to space or numbers or anything. And that got me thinking about a story that I want to share with you. This is a story called Strictly No Elephants. It's written by Lisa Manchev and illustrated by Tune Yu. The trouble with having a tiny elephant for a pet is that you never quite fit in. No one else has an elephant. Every day I take my elephant for a walk. His is a very thoughtful sort of walk. He doesn't like the cracks in the sidewalk much. I always go back and help him over. That's what friends do, lift each other over the cracks. Today I'm walking my tiny elephant to number 17. It's Pet Club Day and everyone will be there. Come along, there's a good boy. I coax in the last few feet. It'll be fine. When I look up, there's a sign on the door. Strictly no elephants. My tiny elephant leads me back to the sidewalk, never minding the cracks. That's what friends do, brave the scary things for you. Aw. Did you try to go to the pet club meeting too? The girl asks. Yes, I say, but they don't allow elephants. The sign didn't mention skunks, the girl says, but they don't want us to play with them either. They don't know any better, I tell her.
He doesn't stink, the girl adds. No, he doesn't, I agree. What if we start our own club? Come along, I say, making certain that my tiny elephant follows me, because that's what friends do. Never leave anyone behind. And I just want to draw your attention to the tiny narwhal in the wagon that is coming to the pet club. It wins for most interesting pet on this page, I think. We can play here, one of our new friends says. All of us. So we paint our own sign. So the sign said before, strictly no strangers, no spoil sports, and they crossed it out and wrote, all are welcome. My tiny elephant will give you directions if you need them, because that's what friends do. So this book made me think of a few things. It made me think of the first UU principle. Everybody is important in kid language. It made me think of just our congregation in general, which really tries to be welcoming. And when people point out that we maybe have a way to improve, we really try to work on that, try to make it possible for everybody to come and be part of our group. And it made me aware of the ways that I, out in the world, don't always really welcome everybody. There's times that I'll meet somebody and I don't even know them, like I don't know anything about them, but for some reason I just judge them and decide that I don't think they'll be a good friend, or I'm not interested in talking to them. Which, I mean, I'm sad to say, I wish that I never did that, right? That would be great. But I do that sometimes. So I'm just really trying to work on that. I'm really trying to work on at least noticing when I do that, right? Why did I just have this feeling about somebody that I don't know at all, right? Maybe it was based on how they look or how they vote or something that they said, but I don't really know them. So my hope for myself this week and for all of you is to try to notice this week when you do this. You might meet somebody in person, you might see somebody in a video, you might read about somebody, and just notice if you immediately have a thought about them that is like, no, they're not, they're not a good fit for me, or I don't like them, or they're bad. Just notice that and see if you can soften your heart, and instead of judging, try to just be really curious about who is this person. I'm going to try to find out more. So that's what I leave you with, trying to go into the week with a sense of curiosity. And I miss everyone and I love you, even though I can see some of you. So peace and have a wonderful week.
Thank you, Poppy, for that lovely introduction. I had a little bit of a shock in the illustration of all of the animals on that one page, because one of them was a hedgehog, and Pan had an encounter this week with a porcupine. So I reacted a little viscerally to that one, but I got the point. I want to introduce our offering for our donee this month, the Vermont Food Bank, continuing with the animal theme. I came across a cartoon many years ago, which I cut out for some reason, and it shows two cheetahs chasing a herd of antelope-like creatures. And one of the cheetahs is saying to the other, I can never tell if I'm hungry or just bored. And it made me think of the fact that Our donee this month is dealing with a group of people for whom that's not a question. We know they're hungry. And the Vermont Food Bank is our premier clearinghouse in Vermont for different kinds of programs that feed the hungry in many different ways. So this is a case of taking care, not of boredom, but of a real need. And I invite you to be as generous as you're able as we collect this donation. This is the time in our morning together when we celebrate milestones and passages in our lives. I have a number of notices from different people, and I'm going to start with Ali Kultrara, whose image you saw in a video lighting our chalice this morning. Ali has been across the lake in Plattsburgh this weekend for a family burial service yesterday, celebrating the life of their grandfather, Dr. John Tanner. Dr. Tanner was a beloved pediatrician in that community for many decades. He died October 1st at the age of 91. I know, Ali, it's hard to lose a grandfather at any age, but it sounds like John had a wonderful life, and we appreciate your sharing his passing with us. Johanna Nichols, our Minister Emerita, has a new right hip, and she returned here from her home in Montpelier for the surgery on Thursday by Dr. Eric Benz and his team at Porter Medical Center, and all went well. Johanna says she's happy to be spending the first week of her recovery in Cornwall, where she's being attentively cared for by Don Marcus and their daughter, Augusta. Elizabeth Golden's calico cat, Paco, died just over a week ago, but Paco is survived by her twin sister, Toddy, who just moved with Elizabeth to their new energy efficient home in the Vergennes community apartments. And Elizabeth says, as an added bonus to this happy new home news, there is the fact that her apartment provides a lovely view of the Green Mountains. Becky Strum says that she and her husband Chuck were grateful to learn Wednesday that he qualified to be a part of a clinical trial of a potential new treatment for the brain tumors that he's been suffering. The surgery portion of it will be Monday, October 26th at Mass General Hospital in Boston. Now, this treatment requires trips to Boston to prepare for the surgery and afterward for the follow-up drug infusions that are part of the trial. Becky is really happy to report that her son Alec and his fiance will be moving to Weybridge on Tuesday from LA with plans to stay here and work remotely, at least until the end of December, in order to help. And Kate says that her daughter Kate will be, excuse me, Becky says her daughter Kate will be driving east from Idaho to stay for an indefinite time by Thanksgiving. So both children will be on hand to help, and Becky sends lots of gratitude for the cards and other support she's received from CVUUS. Becky, you know that we all love you so much and are praying every step of the way that Chuck comes through this and improves, and we look forward to hearing your reports. Lucy Tenenbaum passed on the news that her close friend Denise's sister-in-law Jen is dealing with cancer for the 5th time in 10 years, and Denise has asked that our congregation keep Jen in our thoughts and prayers. This is a good example for me of how our congregation reaches out into the wider community in ways we're not even aware of, and that in times of crisis, people think to come to us for our support. So we appreciate that opportunity to send these prayers. And Lucy, thank you for bringing it to our attention. A very cheery note from Catherine Schloff. Last weekend, our 3 kids, Pearl, Jesse, and Emily, along with their spouses and our grandchildren, made a big and wonderful weekend for Merle and me to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary and soon our 70th birthdays. We cidered from the apples at Pearl's newly acquired home in Cornwall, made pizza in the bread oven Merle made at our log cabin in Bridgewater, and generally ate, drank, and were merry together all weekend. There was a present to Merle and Catherine of a mature crabapple tree, which was going to be planted in their yard in Salisbury. And that was given to them this past weekend. Catherine concludes by saying, "We feel blessed." And we're really happy to be celebrating these great events with you and Merle, Catherine. Thanks for sharing. This, it's a final note in this milestones and passages portion of our service. We will be, this is traditionally Columbus Day weekend and gradually becoming more and more seen as Indigenous Peoples Weekend instead. And I'm going to be talking more about that in next week's service. But I did want to mark as a milestone that our country is moving in the right direction and shifting the focus of this weekend from a conqueror to the people who were dispossessed of their lands. And we look forward to this shift continuing, and we'll do our part in talking about it some next Sunday. I now want to invite you into a period of silent reflection. Every week, people have things that are on their hearts that they don't get to me in time for us to share publicly, but they're still important. And we want everybody to know where their heart lies as they head into the second half of our service. So take this time for meditation or prayer, whatever puts you in touch with where you are today, before we go on with the rest of our service.
And now, I invite you to close your eyes as I read an interspecies meditation by Reverend Gary Kowalski, adapted from his book, 2006 book, The Souls of Animals. Look into the eyes of an animal or imagine yourself doing so. It might be your dog or cat or turtle or bird or any living creature. See truly this never to be duplicated expression of the universe. See the years of living present within those eyes. Contemplate their color, shape, and transparency. And as you look into this being's eyes, pay attention also to what you cannot see. The inwardness, the selfhood, the I that is as singular as its outward expression. What you look upon is a living spirit. Greet and respect it. Appreciate it for what it is. Ask yourself, what does it feel like to be this creature? Become aware of the great iniquity within those eyes, the millennia of evolution they hold within their gaze.
Thank you, Esther. Today we'll be celebrating the many non-human yet domesticated beings we regard as part of our nuclear families or close to it. But as Esther just said to you in this reading, it's important that we cast a wider net in thinking about the idea that we can bless animals and they us. Blessings are a form of prayerful attention, and not every UU is good at that. I'm in that class where I have to work at it. I'm so busy involved with the world that prayerful attention is something I have to be very intentional about. And that's true whether we're talking about our blessings in relation to other humans, other animals, or the universe in general. So maybe you don't have that animal whose eyes you could stare in while Gary Kowalski's reading was being shared with you, but it's important that we work on imagining being able to do that. I asked two congregants to help me wrap my mind and heart around what it means to lead a blessing of the animals. I wanted Mark Spreitzer's perspective as an expert in animal behavioral studies on the faculty at Middlebury College. In our religion, we easily agree to affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, or as Poppy put it in her story, the kids' version of that, everyone is important. We are not agreed about that when it comes to all beings, or even what we mean by the word being. Many of us fear language about life that decenters human beings. It seems like talk about that could encourage the already rampant disrespect of human rights and needs. But leaving that disagreement aside about how wide our concept of beings is, we still have cause to become clearer about what is extraordinary in the animal world. And that's what I wanted to talk to Mark about. Now, Mark mentioned a handful of examples that never cease to amaze him. I found them equally amazing, so I'm not going to add to that list. I'm just going to pass on to you what Mark pointed out to me. Number one was what it means to have a nose and a brain like a dog's that is up to 100,000 times more sensitive to smell than ours. One structure dogs have in their noses that I never knew about is that it allows them to breathe without interrupting their smelling. When we're breathing, we're not smelling as well. Not so with dogs. Whether it's food, emotions, or illness in us or other animals, the dog is recognizing while we are oblivious. It's beyond our powers to see the world, see in quotes, that way that a dog does. Clark's nutcrackers are members of the Jay family. They can store 500 nuts or seeds a minute in up to 10,000 hiding places in a region as much as 40 miles across, and then with amazing accuracy find them again. It's a type of mental mapping capacity that makes you wonder how bird brain ever became an insult. Then there are those bees with the brains the size of pinheads that somehow can tell hive mates where to find flowers that are up to 5 miles away. Mark said he's also quite taken with the crow-sized bowerbirds of Australia and New Guinea. The males court the females by building large nests that use very advanced artistic skills. They even arrange objects leading to the nest to take advantage of artistic concepts of perspective in order to make the nests look deeper than they are. Last but certainly not least, he points out that vampire bats actually display food altruism toward unrelated bats who've been generous with them on happy hunting days. In other words, they focus less on who they are related to than on memories of who has shared blood feasts with them. No wonder Mark liked the Henry Beston quote that I emailed out to you in my weekend greeting on Friday, which ends, "For the animals shall not be measured by man. In a world older and more complete than ours, they moved, finished and complete, gifted with extensions of the senses we have lost or never attained, living by voices we shall never hear. They are not brethren, they are not underlings, they are other nations, caught up with ourselves in the net of life and time, fellow prisoners of the splendor and travail of the earth." This idea that humans should not be the measure of what is meaningful about other animals does not mean we cannot see them as kin in some respects, as Reverend Kowalski did in our reading, an interspecies meditation. As Esther told you, he urged us to take an expansive view of kinship. That way, he said, we can draw wisdom and understanding, the kind we need to heal our common home. The second congregant I turned to for insight was Jess Daniel, the executive director of Homeward Bound, our amazing local animal shelter. Blessing isn't about making everything great in our relationships with animals. It's also about making difficult choices, indeed, playing God, some might say, for others. If we do that, though, from a place of love, we are most likely to experience the kind of redemption Jess is going to tell you about now in her own words.
In reflecting on Barnaby's request for my perspective on the religious tradition of a blessing of the animals, I realized I feel more that I have been blessed by the animals and see the ceremony as a chance to say thank you to them. There are many reasons to thank them, of course, but what comes to my mind is that their existence, especially when it clashes with human needs and desires, can provide the opportunity for grace. Think of the Native American blessing of the buffalo before the hunt. Think of gratitude for medical cures arrived at through animal research. Think of the effort to cohabitate with wildlife as a path to remind ourselves we are part of something larger. In my work, I am frequently afforded this opportunity for grace, as I hope the following story illustrates. Earlier this year, I was part of a team of people that the Vermont Department of Health put together to contain the rabies exposure among a colony of about a dozen feral cats on an Addison County farm. The choices were blunt. The law requires that either the cats had to be captured and individually isolated in cages for 6 months of observation, which for feral cats would have been an exceptionally cruel sentence, or they had to be euthanized. To me, there was no question that euthanasia was the humane choice. Indeed, it struck me as one of many times when it is a blessing to be able to offer. The team spent a hard day doing what we had to do, but fell short of trapping one slippery little gray and white cat. After several days had gone by and the dust settled, traps were reset and she was caught. The town animal control officer delivered her to the shelter, and in her tiny body and round belly we saw a chance at redemption, and went about setting her up with an entire room of her own at the shelter and established Department of Health approved protocols for her care. Zora, named for the author Zora Neale Hurston because that's who I was reading at the time, and because we wanted a name that spoke to survival, settled into her confinement and slowly calmed around people. She grew rounder over time and delivered 5 healthy kittens in midsummer. She nursed them and cared for them, and after about 7 weeks they were separated from her and placed into foster care until old enough for adoption. As the past week ended, so did Zora's quarantine. I do not know when she'll be adopted and what kind of life lies ahead of her, but I'll not soon forget how helping her allowed me to feel a measure of forgiveness.
Barnaby, unmute. There you go.
Yep. I've only been unmuting and muting 1,000 times. You'd think I would remember. In talking with Jess, after she sent me her first draft of what she wanted to say, I could she was calling on some words that ministers often struggle to define, words like blessing and redemption. Rather than asking Jess to explain, what I could tell was more of a feeling than a spiritual claim on her part. I decided to close this homily by simply offering you some of my own thoughts about how you could apply what she shared. First, I would say, don't worry about traditional concepts of what grace is and how it enters our lives. God can be an answer for some folks, but a more universal one for Unitarian Universalists might be that grace is a gift from the web of existence that we receive without doing anything special to merit it. It's a chance to do better. And you don't need to worry, as Christianity does, about how that opportunity might redeem us from real or imagined sins. I invite you instead to define redemption as the experience of finding yourself in time, space, and relationships that free your better angels to do the 3 sisters of love work I spoke about last week, making the world more just, more compassionate, and more beautiful. I think that simple view of grace and redemption is enough to make us grateful and happy. And I hope that what we're going to do now will lift us further beyond happy into sheer joy. We have a slideshow that we're going to offer of animals that folks have sent in, and I'm going to do a little bit of narration with it. And at the end, we're going to make an attempt to open the floor to those of you who didn't participate in the slideshow to name your animals, and perhaps if it's small enough and handy enough to show it to us, and also for those of you who have lost animals to death that you want to name to us to do that. Jordan will come on after the slideshow and explain exactly what's going to happen, and we'll try and make it work. We'll see. But first, let's go to the slideshow. So here we're starting with my dog Pan. He's begging for your understanding that we've never tried this before and there may be some glitches. And I think he's also begging that I will forgive him and not keep him on a leash forever as further punishment for his not listening to me Friday when I screamed at him, "No, no, don't go up to that porcupine." Further details can be shared later. Next slide, please, Margie. So this is our other animal, our other house member, Kester, who is now around 14. He's been an indoor cat his whole life, and he's only in it for the hugs. And I mean real hugs, arms around the neck, rub your face against your partner hugs. We miss that ability to do that in the sanctuary. So Kester really keeps us sane at home by giving them to us. And as a bonus, he has a black question mark on his white left paw, which makes me think that he might be a UU cat. Next slide, please. So this is Freckles Vandenberg, sent in by the Vandenbergs over in Schroon Lake. And Freckles was rescued hours before she was due to be euthanized, Larry says. And there's a second slide here. Freckles has companions in the home. This is Carrie and Wilson as they looked like when they were kittens. They were born in a local garage, even though Larry says they would never admit to that. Can we move to the next slides, please? So as some of you know, Lori Borden and her husband Richard raise Bernese mountain dogs, and these two are Risotto and Orzo. Lori calls them our furry grandchildren. They're both 11 years old, and alas, they're both on palliative care now as they're reaching the end of their lives. Risotto is mother to Pucky, who is 9 years old and is in the next picture. There's Pucky. And Lori sent along a third picture of Greta and Jack. And the former is my daughter Haley's partner's dog, and the latter is their new puppy, Lori says. And as a last little gift, Lori sent along a Mary Oliver poem, which I'm going to ask Esther to share with you right now.
Little Dogs, Rhapsody in the Night. He put his cheek against mine and makes small expressive sounds. And when I'm awake or awake enough, he turns upside down, his 4 paws in the air, and his eyes dark and fervent. Tell me you love me, he says. Tell me again. Could there be a sweeter arrangement? Over and over, he gets to ask, I get to tell.
Thanks, Esther, and thanks, Lori, for sending that in. So the next 4 pictures are of the dogs that Cindy and Gary Gillen have. The first is of Daisy, and the second is of Sadie, and the third is BJ, and the fourth is Yuki. And Cindy adds that Ginny Aschenfelter, who has been staying with them for a while she's in transition, has become their acting grandmother. As you can see, none of these 4 dogs is small. And I talked briefly to Gary, and I detected a note of hesitation before he told me we've never had more than 4 at a time. So maybe that's true, or maybe the size of the dogs just gives the impression there is more than 4 at times. But this is a family big on love of their animals. Next, we have the Gildrian families, Ginger and Teddy. Teddy's the dog, Ginger is the kitten. This picture to me represents the demographic that responded to total overwhelm of COVID and kids at home by saying, okay, we need the calming influence of a puppy, and while we're at it, a kitten. Caitlin Gildrian described this lapse of judgment as one that has improved their lives immeasurably since the weekend in July when both animals were brought home. The next slide is another animal pairing, Chris Murphy's dog Tony and the cat Louie. Now, Chris had Tony for a long time, but the second day after she brought Louie home, Louie curled up right against Tony, and that's when this picture was taken. So that's an unusually happy relationship for a cat and a dog to establish so quickly. Of course, I know Tony as one of those dogs who says, if it's not a ball, I'm not chasing it. So the next picture, another pairing from Martha Soderberg. Smokey, the large dark gray cat, is now sadly dead from pancreatic cancer. Woody, his brother in this picture, continues to prowl around my backyard after 14 years, Martha said, and he's in better shape than I am. Thank you, Martha. The next picture shows Dee Carroll's cat, Lila, and it looks like she has a twin there in the background. I hope the image is large enough on your screen to see it, but that twin is actually a toy that looks remarkably like Lila. Lila ignores the toy, but Dee says sometimes we and friends are startled if it shows up where we weren't expecting it. The next slide is Sue and Charlie Griggs' dog, Lucy. And Sue says, Miss Lucy is looking pretty good for a 90-plus-year-old. She will only pose for treats. Otherwise, forget it. We have another older dog in the next slide, and that's Ellen Flight's dog, Coco. She'll be 14 years old in December. Ellen says she's been my constant companion since March 18th. I even took her on vacation with me last month. I don't know how I would have done during the stay-at-home orders without having another living being in my home and the twice daily need to walk Coco in the neighborhood. Some of you at Eastview will recognize Coco because she used to spend a lot of time over at Eastview with Vera before the stay-at-home orders. The next dog is our bookkeeper Chris's dog, Potter, and Potter is, according to the vet's description when they got him, a 6-year-old South Carolina ditch dog. I'm not actually sure what a ditch dog is. I can only imagine it doesn't mean the kind of dog that you roll up into little balls and give fancy haircuts to. But maybe some of you with Southern background can clue me in later. Our next slide shows Alan Moore with their Springer Spaniel, Lucy, who is 3 years old this week. And according to Alan, still thinks she's a puppy, which keeps Alan and Carol very active. Our next slide is from Allison Cutler, and this is her dog, Winnie, who is 6.5 years young. And Allison said she's known Winnie since the evening she was born. Her mother was an old-fashioned golden retriever with the type of long, silky auburn coat similar to an Irish setter, and her father is a black lab. She exhibits the typical traits of retrievers. She loves tennis balls, tug of war, the water, snow, vanilla ice cream, and her Winnie the Pooh stuffed animal that she cuddles with. And Allison adds, thankfully, she tolerates my grandson pretty well. She's truly the best buddy I could ask for. Well, most of the time. The next two slides come from Mary Conlon. Mary said she loves spending time outside with George, their rescue dog from Georgia. I don't know, this photo looks like it's the top of Snake Mountain. But Mary added, if you're going to use just one picture, it should be one of him with his toys. So that's the next one. The next picture is of Pat Todd's dog, Orvis. Now, Orvis has always been nice to me when I visited Pat, but he's such a fierce guardian of his space. I was never allowed to bring my previous dog, Lyra, or Pan over because Pat wasn't up for whatever squabble she expected to erupt. Our next slide is a cat. Donald Rose sent this in. This is Coco, who is now age 13 and has been Journey's companion ever since Journey was 5 years old. Now, after Donna sent this picture a couple days later, she sent a picture of Coco as a kitten. And I said to Donna, partly because I'd already finished the slideshow, that kitten is just too devastatingly cute for me to show it to the congregation. But if you really want to see an amazingly cute kitten, you should contact Donna, for your own private showing of that photo. Next slide. So Lynn Ballman said, Arlo is my beloved tabby rescue from the South Burlington shelter. She joined my forever home when she was a year old and is the dearest, most animated and clever feline I've ever had the pleasure of parenting in quotes. His favorite nightly treat is a tablespoon of yogurt, which he eats with his right paw. Our next two slides broaden our animal companion definition just a bit. This is John Barstow with one of their 5 chickens, and the next picture is of Kate with another one of the chickens. And Kate says the important thing to note is that it took the COVID-19 crisis for John to give up decades of saying no chickens. So I have 2 pictures here from Becky Strum. This is Evie, who is going to be traveling here from Idaho with Kate in November. You'll remember from my sharing in the milestones when Kate is coming here to help spend time with the family after Chuck's surgery at the end of this month. But until Evie arrives, they are not bereft of dogs because they have, as you will see in the next photo, Catesby, their full-time companion. The next slide is sent in by Jerry Loney. And at the very left, you can see Olivia, who was brought to Homeward Bound as a stray. And when Jerry and Bobby took Olivia home, she was so fearful that she seldom came out of her cat carrier, except to go to her litter box for 2 months or to eat. Now, however, she's incredibly affectionate, and also she's obviously interested in the wider worlds of animals, as you can see her intently watching this PBS nature show on TV. And so the final slide I have is of Eric and Dottie Nelson's dog, Davis. Now, Dottie writes, Eric and I share him with our neighbor, Beverly Cole. When our last dog, Sophie, died, it left a big dog-shaped hole in our lives. We decided not to get another dog because we planned to travel and also visit our grandchildren a lot. But our home just wasn't the same without a dog. About that time, Beverly, who was our age, got Davis. He was a puppy, and Beverly soon realized she had forgotten how much work puppies are and was going to take him to the shelter. Without thinking, I said, why don't we share him? She agreed. Neither of us knew what we were getting into, but 4 years later, we can all say it worked out great. We helped her get past the wild puppy stage by having him stay with us a few days a week and whenever she went to visit her kids. We all helped him learn good dog manners. Davis filled the dog-shaped hole we had in our hearts. When he stayed with us, we had a dog to play with and cuddle with on the couch during movie night. He has everything he needs at both houses, a bed, food bowls, toys, a brush, and a comb. He's never been to a kennel. We think of Beverly as his mom, and Eric and I are his aunt and uncle. He doesn't seem to be at all confused about having 2 homes and seems totally happy wherever he is. So I chose that as the last slide to show, as we sometimes talk about in our human context, that there is no such thing as just one form of a family. Families come in all shapes and sizes, and that's represented even in our relationships with our animals. So thank you, Eric and Dottie, for allowing me to make that point. Now we're going to try to open this up to everybody who didn't send in a photo or name animals they wanted to be a part of the blessing ritual. If you have your animal handy, we invite you to hold them up in front of the camera and to raise your hand next to your face if you want to be called on. And Jordan is going to explain how that will work now.
If you raise your hand, I see Francois raising his hand. For those of you who want to raise your hands electronically, if you go down to your participants list at the very bottom of your screen on your computer, you can click there and see a list of everyone in the meeting. And at the bottom of that list is a thing that says raise hand. That's a little easier because it keeps me from having to scan the screen. If you're on a portable device like a phone or an iPad, down at the very bottom, you'll see ... more, and then you'll be able to raise your hand. but let's see whether we can unmute Francois. And then I saw Carl also. So Francois, I've asked you to unmute, see if that works. Because I can't unmute you, I can just ask.
But the sound isn't working, but that's Princess, everybody. And Dale Birdsall's there keeping them company.
And Carl, we need some like serious technical expertise to unscramble Francois's audio because we keep trying, but
Here. Yes. Hey. This is Paco. Well, Paco is squirming. It hasn't squirmed for a bit. Paco is. You have to give credit for Brett. Brett's the dog purchaser, and Paco is an all-American mutt with quite a history from Puerto Rico. And we've had him for not quite a year. He's not very big, but he's already on his way to being in the Lindholt-Millier Dog Hall of Fame. He's lively and he's affectionate, and he has a partner, Bailey, here, but Paco is a wonderful addition to our house. So thank you.
see anyone else want to raise a physical or a virtual hand? Avi. Let's see, there we go. You should be able to unmute. There you go.
So this, let's see if we can see her. I'm going to pick her up, and she's probably going to object to that. But this is Callie, and Callie and her sister or housemate Ginger, who is sleeping in a basket and doesn't want to be disturbed, were Martha's cats before Martha and I became an item. And Callie is usually the first one to follow me into the bedroom at night and snuggle up on my chest for a few extra hugs. And in Martha's absence, they have been wonderful, wonderful companions.
Thanks, Avi. Anyone else? Then I will turn the helm back over to Barnaby and Margaret.
Okay, thanks so much. We're still getting the hang of doing this, but the reason we never did it live, as Poppy referred to, is that we were told by animal experts that it could be quite traumatic for a lot of the animals to all be together in one space. So as long as we're streaming and not meeting in the sanctuary, we'll continue to try and work on having a chance at least once a year to bless our animals. And at this point, I want to move into the actual blessing, which I felt needed to take place in our sanctuary. So Kate and I made a video of this on Thursday, and I asked Margie to put it up now.
Spirit of love-giving life, we know Earth is alive and aloud with you. Animals abound, interwoven into our human lives and wholly independent. We are blessed that they are fellow citizens of the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part.
We give thanks for animal compassion.
Some of them we hunt, in some cases to extinction. May we grow in wisdom about how to live lightly among our fellow animals.
We give thanks for animal companionship in our lives and our
This morning, we have named the animals dearest to us. And now, with the power you have vested in me, I bless them. And as I do this, we affirm that we more fully experience life's greatest gift, love, through their presence among us. May we also honor the mystery of this gift by blessing all animals, known and unknown, even the ones that can harm us. May we thus know the blessing of compassion and deeper respect for the interdependent web of existence, of which we are one small part. Please repeat after me the closing of this blessing. May we do this to the end that our souls grow into harmony with the spirit of life.
All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing high, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything they got now. Listen to the bass, it's the one on the bottom where the bullfrog croaks and the hippopotamus moans and groans with a big to-do. The old cow just goes moo. Dogs and the cats, they take up the middle. The honeybee hums and the crickets fiddle. The donkey brays and the pony neighs. The old coyote howls. Singing in the nighttime, singing in the day. The little duck pipes and is on his way. Possum don't have much to say. Porcupine talks to herself. It's a simple song sung everywhere by the ox and the fox and the grizzly bear, grumpy alligator and the hog above, sly raccoon and the turtle dove. Everybody here is a part of the plan. We all get to play in the great critter band, from the eagle in the sky to the whale in the sea. It's one great symphony. All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing high, some sing out loud on a telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything they got now. All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher, some sing out loud on a telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything they got now.
Thank you so much for that piece of music. It's always a favorite. I'm going to ask Margie to push the magic button, which will allow me to start putting people into breakout rooms. And
You should be.
I am neither host nor co-host anymore.
Really? Maybe your phone is. Maybe something is. Let me look and see.
And I can't even unmute people. So we'll work on getting that coordinated in a second. You just made my phone co-host, which is confusing, but I'll see what I can do. Oh, I know what I can do.
Oh, you named yourself social hour host. So I saw host and I thought, oh man, he's host. Now he's host.
Oh, okay, great. Then people can now unmute themselves, I hope. Yep. And